Alright guys, Wyatt back with you, and what we're going to go through today is how to make a building block radio group app in Android Studio. Alright, so once you get everything up and running, we're going to go into the XML tab, get rid of this initial text view, and we're going to change it to a radio group. Alright, so we're going to wrap content for the width and height to make sure everything is nice and organized and constrained. We're going to want to give this guy an ID. We'll call it radio group, so that way we can access it a little bit later on. Let's see here. Next, we're going to just add some buttons inside this group. So the group's going to contain, we'll go with 3 different buttons. First one, we'll do radio button. Again, wrap content for the width and height. We're going to call this, we're going to give this an ID. If we need to access it a little bit later, we'll give it radio 1. Seems like a good name. And then let's see, we'll give it a text as well. So it's gonna, this button itself, the text that reads is 1. We're also gonna incorporate an on-click listener, and we're gonna have it initially be check button. So this is gonna be a method that we're gonna create and then call initially to this, so that way the app doesn't crash right away. We'll have checked as true, and that seems pretty good for this first button. Next, we're going to create 2 more buttons, pretty similar to button number 1. The only main difference is we're not going to use that on-click listener right here because we already have it initiated with button number 1. Alright, so we call it radio 2. The text is going to read 2. And let's say checked. Yeah, we need checked to be true. Alright, that's good for radio button 2. We'll just copy and paste this guy to make our third button. Change these 2 little variables, and we got that all set up good to go. Now we're going to want to do something when these buttons are clicked, but let's look how it's laid out first. Alright, that's fine for now. Alright, so what we're going to want is we're going to create a little text view, and again, wrap content for the width and height. We're going to say, let's say this text, we'll go with an ID. The ID will say, no, not radio, text view. Text view selected works. Alright, and then what we're going to want to do is we're going to want the text initially read your selected, or your selection. That seems pretty good. Alright, the text size is 20 SP. Take up an adequate amount of space on the screen, and that's pretty good for the text view. Next, what we're going to want is a button. So the button, let's do this layout width and layout height as wrap content again. Keep it nice and easy. And let's see here, the ID, we're going to give the ID so we can access it later. We'll call it button apply, because that's what's going to happen. So we'll go text. The text that's going to read is apply. Nice. Alright. Let's see, anything else we need for this guy? Just close it off. Let's go look at it real quick, and this is all jumbled up, but we'll just fix this real quick. Instead of going in the XML manually and typing everything out to get the constraints, I find it a little bit easier when you use a constraint layout just to drag these pointers around. That'll help set it. Oh, not you guy, you need the whole thing. Alright, so we'll do that. Sometimes clicking it can be tricky, but you got this. Alright, so now that we have our app generally set up, look, we don't want to just type all that stuff. It's much easier just to go in there and drag some buttons around instead of going constraint and top, yada yada yada. Alright, let's jump over to the Java. This is what we're going to want to do. So for instance variables, we're going to have a radio group, and we're going to label it as radio group. Seems to work pretty well. Let's go radio button next. Radio button, we'll do the same kind of format, radio button. And because we used a text view earlier, we're going to create a text view and stick with the same formatting style here. Alright, so inside this onCreate, let's initiate these instance variables. So we have, let's start with the radio group first. Find view by ID, r.id, so it links over to the XML, and we called it radio group there, so we'll link it to radio group here. Let's do the same thing for the text view. So text view, find view by ID, yada yada yada. We'll come back to the radio button in a second. Alright, that works. Here we're going to want to put a button. It likes it when you use its auto-populate stuff. So button, we'll call it button, apply, find view by ID. We're going to link it up to that button apply button we had earlier. Alright, so now we have everything kind of connected for the most part. So button apply, what we're going to want to do is we want an on-click listener, so when we tap on the button, what do we want to happen? Well, we'll work on that. So we want something new to happen, a view, and the rest will auto-populate right here. So on this click, what we're going to say happens is create this integer called radio ID and find view by ID, radio group dot get check button radio ID. Alright, and then what we're going to want to do is we're going to say this radio button is find view by ID, this radio ID we just created. So what we're saying is out of this radio group, get the check button ID. What is its ID? Well, its ID is now this integer radio ID that we've created. So radio ID, it's not auto-populating right here. So something tells me that what we're doing is slightly incorrect. But we'll come back and fix it a little bit later on. Alright. So what else we're going to want to do? Let's see here. So this text view, we're going to want to change the text view to set the text to your choice. So the choice that we've selected, either 1, 2, or 3, plus the radio ID, which is actually going to change based on what is selected. And we're going to get that. So we're getting the button and then we're changing that to a text. Get text. Alright. So from here, what we now need to do is create that method we had earlier in there in the XML called check button. So that way it doesn't crash right away, and so that way we have some things alter when we actually check the button. So check button view. Those are the variables it's going to take. So we're going to have pretty much the same stuff that we had above with the radio ID, radio group, get check button, yada yada yada. Just copy and paste that down here. And what we're also going to want to do is we're going to want to We're going to want to create a toast at the bottom, so that way when we check the button, we're going to want to say your selection has been I'm going to go plus, and then radio ID, a radio button dot get text. So now we're going to have the toast message, a little blurb at the bottom, read your selection has been this text. Alright, and let's see here, let's try to run it and we'll see how it looks. On the Pixel XL, you can choose whatever you like. Alright. Android emulator loading state. Now, is that necessary? That's objective, because you can read it saying loading state by yourself. You didn't need me to tell you that. You see it's doing something on its own. Alright. Your choice one. Alright. I mean, at least it loaded to get started. That's always a good start. But it's still running the Gradle. So this is kind of risky to do anything right now because it might crash on us. But it also might crash because that radio ID wasn't properly, well, it wasn't properly done. So now look at that. Symbol variable radio ID. This is giving us the error. And let's see here. Yada. I mean, it's kind of working, but you could probably submit this for class and get a decent grade. But let's see here. What we're going to want to do is actually, because this isn't an ID that's in the XML, we didn't create, this is an ID that's right here in the Java. All you have to do is find by ID and then put what it's called. And that's something I recently learned, like today. Alright, so now that we got those two little things fixed, let's go run this bad boy again. The Gradle building is going at the bottom. Open it up. So we click it. Your selection has been 1. And we click apply. Your selected number is 1. You're one of a kind. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Alright.